What's up YouTube? This is the Blue Eyes channel and today I am bringing you a deck profile of a Dark Magician deck for pretty much a lockdown strategy. A deck that kind of prevents your opponent from doing things, and this is a unique variant in my opinion. That's the whole purpose of me making this deck. And also, I believe that this deck could actually have potential with the Link format. Trying to bring back Dark Magician and with the effects of like Eternal Soul to revive Dark Magician, that's perfect for like Link material. And I believe there's some spellcaster type Link monsters that I've heard about. So let's get started with the deck profile. Um, so first, what you want to run is you want to run 3 Dark Magician. Obviously, the main core of the deck. This is you want to run 3 because if you're running like Eternal Soul and Dark Magician's like in your hand or in your graveyard, bring it back, obvious reasons. So you want to run 3 of those. Next, you want to run 3 copies of Palladium Oracle Mahad. And this deck actually kind of has a bit of draw power. So you want to draw this card for many reasons. One, he's good for facing off against dark monsters. So if your opponent's running, I don't know, Dark Worlds or the new Tribute deck that's coming out, which is Lair of Darkness, I believe. Anyways, if your opponent's running dark monsters, it's good for that. And if they're not, that's okay, because if this card is destroyed, you can essentially bring back Dark Magician and then do a lot of things. I mean, it's a free special summon for a level 7 monster with 2500. So as soon as you draw that card, including your draw phase, you basically reveal it into your hand and then you special summon it. So it's if this was Blue Eyes, it'd be the Blue Eyes alternative White Dragon of the deck. So it's essentially just that one card that kind of helps. So next you want to run 3 copies of Magician's Rod. And for those of you who don't know why Magician's Rod is good, it's essentially good for bringing out Dark Magical Circle or Eternal Soul, and just kind of have that kind of recursion effect for Eternal Soul, or Search Power. Well, yeah, Search Power for Dark Magical Circle. I think it's Dark Magical Circle. I get the two confused. Yeah, Dark Magical Circle. So good for that. I believe that it's really good because, well, if you special summon a monster during your opponent's turn, so if you activate Eternal Soul, bring back Dark Magician, you can actually just use Magician Rod's effect once you activate that, which I believe returns Dark Magician to your hand, and then, or no, you return Magician's Rod to your hand. You have to tribute the spellcaster, but with Eternal Soul running, you can just bring Dark Magician back on your next turn. So that's a good plus. Next, we're going to get a little bit into the Magician Girl support. I'm not running all the Magician Girls. I'm not running Kiwi, Dark Magician Girl, and Lemon Magician Girl. I'm only running Berry, Chocolate, and Apple. So what you want to do is you want to run 3 copies of Berry Magician Girl, mainly to search for chocolate, because again, once you have chocolate in your hand, which you want to run 3 copies of, so 3 Chocolate Magician Girls, mainly for discarding spellcaster types to draw a card. So essentially what I'd recommend is discarding Dark Magician because Eternal Soul can just bring it back, so you can do that. Or, you can just do really any spellcaster type. The Magician Girls are fine, because we are running Apple in this deck. So, next, now we're gonna get into what you want to run 2 copies of. You want to run 2 copies of Apple, okay? The reason why is, well, you don't really want to have 3 copies. It's not important. But it's good with graveyard effects, so if one of these is in the graveyard along with chocolate and berry, you can shuffle up to 3 other magician girls. So if you have one in your graveyard, you'd bring out chocolate and berry to your hand. And then if your opponent destroys your second apple, you can bring the apple in your graveyard along with the chocolate or berry. It says up to 3, so it's good for graveyard recursion stuff. Next, you want to run. This is really a preference thing, but I run 2 Apprentice Illusion Magician Girl, Apprentice Illusion Magician. Sorry, I would run 3, but I currently only have 2. But it's really up to you. This card's really amazing. I do recommend running 3 because you can just discard a spellcaster type monster, special summon it. It's good for hand trap effect to boost up a monster's attack, things like that. So that's recommended at 3. But this is kind of just a guide of like how I build a lockdown magician deck, dark magician deck. And I feel like, again, with the link format, I feel like people could actually run this deck. Another thing I would run is 2 copies of Fairy Tale Sleeper. The reason why I run this card is because when you set this monster face down, let's say you have your opening hand, you have one of these and a Dark Magician, or a Palladium Oracle Mahad, but you don't have the Apprentice Illusion Magician. So what I do is set this monster face down, just end your turn there. Unless you have spells and traps, obviously you want to play those, but if you don't have any of that and you just have big monsters you can't really summon, but you have one of these in your hand, set this card because when it's flip summon, you get to special summon one monster from your hand, any monster. So I feel like this card could actually be a good staple for a lot of high level monster decks. But with Dark Magician though, I mean, I feel like it can do some potential. If you have Palladium Oracle Mahad in your hand, especially Palladium Oracle Mahad, special summon that, and if your opponent wants to get rid of that, well, you're good either way because you can just bring out Dark Magician. So some fun combos you can do with that. Next off, we're going to go into our spell cards, and we don't really have a lot of spells. So we'll start off with the Dark Magical Circle. I only I own 2, but I recommend running 3. It's great for search power. You can look at the top cards of your deck. You can banish stuff as soon as Dark Magician comes out on the field. And honestly, I feel like that is kind of what makes the deck run. It benefits you when you bring out Dark Magician. So that's really good for that. Now, one thing I don't really see a lot of people run, honestly, and I don't understand why they don't, is Secret Village of the Spellcaster. Now, this card is kind of a you can side deck it, you can main deck it. The reason why I would say probably side deck this card, if you have the 3rd Dark Magical Circle and the 3rd Apprentice Illusion Magician, side deck these. But because if your opponent's not running Magician or any Spellcaster archetype, throw these into the deck as a side deck thing. But if they're not, this card's really useful. It locks down your opponent from using any spell cards if they do not control a Spellcaster and you do. So, if you're running the Magician Girls, it's hard to get rid of those through battle. If you're doing it by card effects, that's a thing. But if you flat out bring out Dark Magician on the first turn, you have Eternal Soul, like how is your opponent going to just easily destroy it with card effects? So it kind of balances out depending on what your opponent's strategy is. If they're using spell or card effects to destroy your monsters, well, Dark Magician's really good for that kind of thing. And if your opponent's trying to just attack all your monsters, kind of like a beatdown strategy, then that's where the Magician Girls come in. So either way, you kind of have a somewhat advantage. It just depends on what you get. So the last spell card, I run 1 copy of this card, is Dark Magic Veil. This card is pretty decent. You pay 1,000 life points, special summon 1 dark spellcaster time monster from your hand or graveyard. So if you want to bring out your apprentice illusion magician from your graveyard, let's say you use this effect to boost a spellcaster by 2000 attack, either by hand trap or by it being on the field, then you could just essentially bring it back, and it's a little bit intimidating when both dark magician or any of your magicians and apprentice illusion magician are both on the field. Now we're going to start off with our trap cards, and we are running a lot of traps. First of all, you want to run 3 copies of Eternal Soul for obvious reasons. This card's one of the best revival cards for your Dark Magician. It does kind of have a double-edged sword effect, where if this card is destroyed, destroy all your monsters. So if your opponent runs like Twin Twister, or if they're running MST for some reason, or Cosmic Cyclone, whatever reason, it's not when this card is destroyed, it's when it leaves the field. So if your opponent Cosmic Cyclones it, or if your opponent Twin whatever, that's going to be a little bit bad for you, because, well, that'll just destroy all your monsters. But I like to run 3 because if your opponent destroys one and you have Dark Magician on the field, and let's say you either do Magical Circle to somehow add a Dark Magician from your deck to your hand, or using Chocolate Magician Go to draw a Dark Magician, whatever the case may be, and you have an Eternal Soul ready, like, it's good for rebuilding that field. So that's why I run 3 Eternal Soul. I feel like everybody should run 3 Eternal Souls because, well, Next, you want to run 3 copies of Magician's Defense. This card is not really like one of the best trap cards, but honestly, I feel like with the next one card that I'm just going to go ahead and pull out from the stack, I'll explain why I run 3. So if you have 1, you're pretty much good. Set that and activate it. You want to see this card as good as possible just for that defense backup. And if your opponent is planning to attack your monsters, I have 1 copy of Magical Hats. And this card, in conjunction with your other 2 Magician's Defense in your deck, so basically you put your monster face down and you treat your 2 other Magician's Defense as face down monsters, and if your opponent doesn't want to risk it and just says, "Oh, I'll end my turn," well, they're still destroyed during the end phase, and when they are destroyed, you can special summon any spellcast time monster in your graveyard. So again, recursion effects. That's why I run the 3 Magician's Defense and 1 Magical Hats. I know a lot of people don't run these cards, but I feel like with this whole deck purpose of just really recursion effects and somewhat of a lockdown strategy, that's why I run this engine. It's not really an engine, but it's a spellcaster type strategy. It's specifically for spellcaster types, but yeah. Next, you want to run 3 Dark Renewals. This card is really good. If you have one of your Buried Magician Girls and you normal summon that, and really, this card it's so good for searching Dark Magician, bringing it out on the field, which is why I recommend running 3 Dark Magical Circles, because when you activate Dark Renewal, when your opponent summons a monster, you send them both to the graveyard. If it's Pendulums, it goes on top of the extra deck. But if your opponent summons a monster, and let's say you have Berry out on the field, Berry's okay for adding like chocolate to your hand, when you normal summon, you would add like a chocolate to your hand. But if your opponent attacks into it, you can bring out another Magician Girl, so either apple or chocolate. But if your opponent is bringing out a monster, this is where it really depends on where you want to go with this. Now, if your opponent summons a monster that is trying to counter your Magician effect, this is quite a big surprise for some people. If they're trying to like negate your monster effects or just whatever, use Dark Renewal, send them both to the grave. It does not, however, negate the summon. It just sends them to the graveyard. So if they have an effect that says just completely unaffected, that's kind of a downfall. But honestly, for what this deck's purpose, and considering that I'm making this pretty much unique, um, I feel like Dark Renewal can be helpful in against a lot of other decks. Like, unless your opponent is specifically building a deck that makes it unaffected, then, well, I don't know what to say. So, next, I want to run 2 copies of Magician Navigation, and this I'm actually going to say 2 of. You could run 3, that's really up to you, but I personally am fine with just running 2. This card lets you special summon a Dark Magician from your hand, and then special summon a level 7 or below spellcaster monster from your deck. Now, really, what you can do with this is special summon Dark Magician and then bring out Apprentice Illusion Magician from your deck. Considering I'm running 2, this is kind of useful. If you're running 3, then, you know, it's still useful, don't get me wrong. It's just, when I run 2, it's less chances of me drawing it into my hand, so it's going to be in my deck, and if I have a Magician's Navigation, then things kind of work from there. So that's why I run that. And last but not least, for our traps, we're going to run 2 Black Illusions. Now, another card that not a lot of people run. However, I feel like this trap card's pretty decent for what it does. Until the end of this turn, all dark spellcaster type monsters you control that are actually all dark spellcaster type monsters. So, oh yeah, you currently control. So anyways, all those spellcasters. So let's say Dark Magician or Apprentice Illusion Magician. Say your opponent's trying to either run it over by beatdown or try and destroy it by card effects. Either way, they're not going to do that on this turn, because what Black Illusion does is, till the end of this turn, all Dark Spellcaster monsters with 2,000 or more attacks, so again, Dark Magician or Apprentice Illusion Magician, but not Palladium Oracle Mahat, so that's one thing that this doesn't work for. Cannot be destroyed by battle, their effects are negated, also they are unaffected by your opponent's card effects, so it's a good backup plan for what you're doing. So that's pretty much it for the main deck. For the extra deck, now I don't have a lot of Link monsters yet for this deck. However, when I play against friends and when I'm dueling like people as like casual duels, and we typically don't really apply by the Link format just because we just simply don't have a lot of Link monsters currently. I mean, it's a new format. It's just like with Pendulums, how a lot of people didn't have a lot of Pendulum stuff. So yeah, but definitely in the future though, I will probably get Link format for this deck. I honestly see this deck working for the Link format, considering you can do reoccursion effects. So if you have like Magician's Rod and you bring out Dark Magician or something, that's a quick link too. And then Magician's Rod has an effect while in the graveyard. And if you have Eternal Soul, bring out Dark Magician, and then you can link for 3, things like that. So there's a lot of potential, I honestly believe in my personal opinion, that, you know, if you want to make this into a Link format, I honestly feel like this will work. So I currently only have 5 cards, and they're all Xyz monsters. 3 Ebon Illusion Magician and 2 Ebon High Magician. And honestly, this deck plays really well for what it has. If whenever you guys get Link monsters for spellcasters, you know, some good staple Link monsters like Proxy Dragon or Firewall Dragon, whatever cards you decide to put into your extra deck. Now, I feel like it will benefit off of these because with the extra zones, you can do stuff. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please do like my channel. I know I haven't been really uploading a lot of videos. It's hard because the Link format, there's not a lot of things. You know, you have to have pretty much a lot of money for certain cards. So, thank you guys for watching, and have a good day.